Please welcome to the stage former Center board member and past Center dinner honoree, Tom Kirdahy.
That was incredibly moving. I remember seeing Keith Haring in the East Village in the 80s and seeing those early chalk herrings on the subway, and you took me back to a place of such vibrancy. Thank you for your generosity to the center. It's extraordinary. Good evening. My name is Tom Kirdahy, and I have the privilege of presenting Ted Snowdon with the Vanguard Award tonight. Ted is one of our community's unsung heroes. A quiet, kind man who always shows up, Ted has always been there for us. A few weeks ago, I asked Ted what he wanted me to say about him tonight. He deflected the question, but over the course of a few hours, I learned a great deal more about him than I had known even after decades of friendship. This is Ted's style: humble, not self-promoting, modest to the core. Ted first learned about the center in 1983, which was the first time the Pride Parade marched down Fifth Avenue rather than going up 6th. As he reminded me, there were protesters that year in front of St. Patrick's, and when the parade passed the cathedral, a float that was blasting Flashdance stopped in front of it, and the lyrics, "In a world made of steel, made of stone," were blaring as people gyrated on the float. As Ted recounts, the joy emanating from the float was a delicious remedy to the hate being spewed. From the way he told me that story of that first Pride Month march down Fifth Avenue, it should come as no surprise that Ted is a DJ. Ted ultimately took his love of music and started spinning at center dances in 1993 and continued doing so for 20 years. He became known especially for his Studio 54 classic dance nights. Being a DJ meant raising funds for the center, and he made sure people rarely left the dance floor when he was spinning. But this is what I love about Ted. When I asked him about his relationship to the center, he made clear to me that he was a center user since 1987. So instead of making it about him, he made it about the center and all it had done for him. When Ted started donating to the center in 1988, it came from a place of deep conviction for what the center could be: a welcoming place, a safe space, a home where community is truly centered. From his early donations in the late 80s, Ted went on to provide gifts in the 90s that allowed the center to build new offices. Ted jokes that he was part of both capital campaigns, including, as he puts it, the first one where we added an elevator and got hot water. That was a hell of a lot harder than the later one. Ted's generosity knows no limits, but as someone who's known him for nearly 20 years, it's important for me to say that it's his kindness, commitment to community, and deep politics that make me love him so much. I know Ted through two worlds: my world as an activist for our community, but also in my world as a theater producer, where Ted has been working successfully for 50 years. Ted has produced some of the seminal LGBTQ+ plays of our time, boldly bringing subject matter once thought taboo to the stage. One of his first productions was about women's bodily autonomy, and more recently, he has produced works about queer immigrants and the barriers governments place on the right to love freely. I've had the privilege of working with Ted on plays by my husband, the late great American playwright Terrence McNally. Terrence adored Ted. Terrence adored Ted and his unconditional passion for the art form. In short, Ted has taste, passion, and vision, but there's more. I've learned in the last few years that Ted has slowed down his producing a bit. The reason is simple. As he put it, he's become an activist for democracy. In the face of rising attacks on democracy, Ted has thrown his resources to campaigns across the nation that are committed to stemming the spread of hate and preserving democratic principles. His deep dedication is nothing short of astonishing. But I think here's the coolest part. Ted is an Army veteran married to a Navy vet. I mean, a couple of queer veterans fighting Trump and doubling down on democracy is about as hot as it gets. I love Ted Snowdon. He is smart and kind and funny and gentle and passionate and humble and determined and generous. He is a person of great integrity who has always been there for all of us during periods of agonizing pain and great elation. Ted shows up, and we're all the better for it. Friends, please welcome Ted Snowdon.
I am what I am. Yeah. How many times did I play that song at center dances? Oh my goodness. Well, thank you, Tom, so much for those kind words. I'm overwhelmed, really. It's been a pleasure for these past 20 years to work with you and to get to know you and Terrence, that great Terrence McNally, everyone, who put gay characters on stage on Broadway in 1965, long before the center was born. Duffy and I have been blessed to be a part of your sphere, so thank you. Oh, and get your tickets for Tom's newest production on Broadway, New York, New York, it will blow your minds. Okay. I must thank the glorious Glenda Testone and her vibrant staff for offering me this honor. Renee, Brian, Leah, it has been a privilege to work with you. I salute my esteemed co-honorees, Alok, and the Keith Haring Foundation. We thank them for their brave visions and support of our community. To my beautiful, caring, wonderful husband, Duffy Violante. Now, Duffy chose not to be up here with me tonight to share the Vanguard Award, even though his own activism warrants it. Some of you knew Duffy from his volunteer years here as head of the massage team on that awesome Cycle for the Cause bike ride from Boston to New York City. And others of you know of his tireless efforts on the board of another LGBTQ center, the one up in upstate Kingston, New York. That's a difficult job in pandemic times. Thank you, my love. Thank you for your hands-on involvement. And that's no massage pun is intended there. And I want to welcome Duffy's wonderful son, David, and his daughter-in-law, Dorinda, here. So honored to have you with us tonight from upstate. So, I do like to talk more about others than myself. We have a lot of LGBT history in the hall tonight. Great leaders, pioneers really, from the 70s and 80s. These people inspired me as only great leaders can, and I am in their debt. Richard Burns, Executive Director here at the center for over 20 years. and a man who doesn't suffer fools or wavering politicians lightly. Here tonight with his wonderful husband, Bobby Berg. So many organizations Richard has championed: Lambda Legal, the AIDS Memorial, and now the American LGBTQ plus Museum on the Upper West Side, on my block. So thank you, Richard. You're a hero. Sure. The beautiful and talented Kate Clinton, who kept us all laughing during the dark days of the Bush and Clinton and Bush eras. Brilliant humorist, stand-up wit, writer, and life partner of the late, great Urvashi Vad, whose name and whose memory we are tasked to keep alive forever. So, we have a table over there of the Gill Foundation. Tim Gill and his husband, Ambassador Scott Miller, not here tonight, but here in spirit. Last year's winners of the Edie Windsor Trailblazer Award. Tim's creation of the Gill Foundation in the mid-90s provided a beacon of light to LGBTQ organizations all over the nation. Tim believed that pooling and strategizing gay dollars would give us big wins, big results, and he was right. Another hero. Judith Turkel, the center's board chair for 5 years in the late 90s. Dear friend and influencer, who persuaded me over dinner one night to host an upstate fundraiser for the center, which lasted 6 summers. And good work, Judith, And here with her wife, Jennifer Cosley, both tireless advocates of many, many causes. Bruce Anderson, the center's board chair for 4 years, also up until 2009, who stepped in and gave of himself in extraordinary ways. Welcome, Bruce and Mitchell. We have Roz Richter here, openly lesbian New York State appellate justice, who is married to the late, much-loved and legendary Janet Weinberg, who devoted 10 years of service to the center, first on the board and then as staff development officer in the early 2000s. How we miss Janet. So welcome, dear Roz. Sean Strube, writer, entrepreneur, ACT UP activist, founder of Pause Magazine, director of the Zero Project, fighting to decriminalize hateful HIV laws, and the current mayor of Milford, PA. Okay, sorry for Milford. Okay. Brent Nicholson Earl, my dear friend, and founder of the American Run to End AIDS, who ran around the circumference of America, yes, the whole country, to bring awareness to the AIDS crisis at its height. We love you, Brent. My partner in crime is over there, or disco, I should say. Joe Fiore, stands about. The best kind of volunteer that the center could have, with his tireless leadership of Dance 208 and those famous fur balls. Okay, do I need to explain that? No, okay, all right. Joe and his dance committee raised a lot of cash for the center, and we're eternally grateful for the joy he gave us and the memories. Thank you, Joe. I want to also put it out to some other folks in the room. This is not on the teleprompter. We have here David Brock, the founder of Media Matters for America and American Bridge, the single most force out there fighting the right-wing media and getting President Biden elected. Thank you, David. God bless you. Bradley Boychuk, Mary Pat, David Thau. I believe Tom Perez is in the room. Is that true? Yes? Yes, well, I can't hear that. So if he's here, we love Tom, chair of the DNC, who got President Biden elected. So we love having them all here. So let's move the teleprompter up. Thank you. Oh, Kingston, New York, I was supposed to say. Okay, thank you. Next. Yeah, next. Next are two gentlemen who turned my life around, and I bet yours too. Evan Wolfson, the founder of Freedom to Marry. Whose dream of same-sex marriage was turned into a landmark legal reality in a very short 20 years. Astonishing. So, Evan, we salute you here tonight with a splendid husband, Chung-hae. So, yes. Need I add, Duffy and I are eternally grateful that you married us in 2015. So, and next, Mark Solomon, my brilliant consultant in matters charitable and political. Mark needs little introduction. Before he was Evan's right arm at Freedom to Marry, he brought LGBT marriage to Massachusetts in 2004, setting the stage for all that was to follow over the next decade. Mark, my collaborator and guide, we love you, and Danny, and hello, Caleb. Okay. Glenda, I need to honor all that you've achieved as well. It takes a very rare talent to pilot a place like the center through 14 years of incredible highs, marriage, and terrifying lows, COVID. How did you manage to do it with such tenacity and kindness? Plus a lot of smiles and a lot of glamour. And all the while raising a beautiful daughter with Jema and riding in Cycle for the Cause. Glenda Testone, everyone, a true leader. Now, all these great leaders that were my inspiration, they remind me to keep fighting, to not give up or worse, get complacent. And that's why I stare at Urvashi's photo in my kitchen every day. All of the LGBT experts who work with Mark and me agree that we are in a very tricky and dangerous place right now. For every victory like the Respect for Marriage Act or last week's triumph in Wisconsin, which will benefit us all, we still have to read about regular normalized murders in our trans communities. Attempts to outlaw drag artists, for God's sake. Let me be theatrical here. All of our LGBT rights are at risk of being stripped away. Don't tell me I'm off. It's state after state, not just extreme Texas and Florida. We have over 400, right now, 400 anti-LGBT bills on legislative dockets so far this year. And that's not even talking about our brothers and sisters around the globe whose lives are threatened every moment of every day. Russia, Uganda, it's disgusting. But we keep on fighting, as our leaders taught us and teach us to do. Believe me, at 77, I'd love to take a break from all these battles. We have no choice but to fight on. So now that my time is mostly up, and it's not. Yeah, it's not over. Let's talk quickly about 40 years at the center. Okay. I've told many people why I got here and how the center saved my life. Yes, it did. If I didn't exactly crawl through the front doors of 208 West 13th in 1987, I was certainly a gay man in need of help, a kind of help that only that building could provide. Now, I was safely off party drugs by then, but I held on to some, well, I was, and that was a big achievement unto itself, you can be sure. But it's deeper than that. I held on to some pretty risky outlaw behaviors. My sexual addiction needed to be addressed. I was going nowhere fast in a world of bars and dance clubs looking for love in all the wrong places. And remember, this was the late 80s, the late 80s, and the AIDS crisis raging and no treatment in sight. But did that stop me? No. Until a great friend steered me into the 12-step rooms where I soon enough found the healing that I needed. At the center, I discovered a smorgasbord of life-affirming and packed in those days recovery rooms. Recovery that gave me lifelong friends and helpmates to get me through the next 36 years. Now, if anybody remembers using the center in the late 80s, long before that first renovation, then you knew exactly what community with a capital C meant. For instance, en route to your ACOA meeting, you'd be forced to walk through a Saturday night girth and mirth dance or gay bingo. Also, you could not possibly avoid Larry Kramer and Peter Staley and the ACT UP pioneers in the big room downstairs, screaming with righteous anger as they planned their next nonviolent protest. There was no missing them, no matter how uncomfortable it made you or me. As a privileged gay man of some means, I was suddenly thrust into fellowships with an immediate sense of community. This was all new to me from my isolation place. Here I found recovery that could not be bought. I was so blessed to have found my new home. The center had a dazzling young lawyer as its ED back in those days, and I quickly fell under his spell. Richard Burns was a force. Yes, you again, Richard. I had a sense of where he was taking the center, and so I began making donations, apparently including new office space that super generous Joy Thompson and I helped to fund, as Richard recently reminded me. Little did I know that I would still be an annual donor all these years later. I couldn't help it. I read a brochure saying that 5,000 people a week walked through those doors, and I thought, wow, big bang for the buck. Through times rocky and smooth, lean times, full times, I've stuck with the center as a friend and donor, and I know that many in this room have done and are doing the same. We must. I may no longer use the facilities and programs of the center as I once did, but that's secondary. What matters is that this brick and mortar grand old dame at 208 West 13th Street must keep her doors open to every LGBTQ person in New York City and beyond. And so I encourage you tonight, if you can, to dig a little deeper and to guarantee that our beautiful center lives on for at least another 40 years. And to all who walked with me on this journey, I say bravo, keep it up. We still need you. And to that next generation of activists in this room tonight, God bless you. Know that we are with you as you fight to expand and demand your rights and all of our rights and freedoms. And like Urvashi told us, not just for LGBT people, it's intersectional. It's for all minorities and abused people everywhere. Don't give up. Don't let the bastards dim your lights. The disco ball will continue to spin and our music will live on. They will not take away our victories and they will not steal our victories or our collective joy. Thank you for this honor and for hearing me out. Have a wonderful dinner.